My name's Jack Peterson, and until recently, I was married to Lisa. We spent 17 years together, and I thought things were good, until they weren't. Predictably, the blame landed on me. Divorce courts practically gift full custody to mothers, who then often make their kids resent their dads. It's like the laws are set up to punish men. We had 2 kids, our 14-year-old son and a 16-year-old daughter. For a long time, I thought our life was solid. I loved my wife, and I believed she loved me. Emma, our daughter, was a daddy's girl, close and loyal. She was into cars, got her license right at 16, and wanted to be an engineer like me. Weekends were our time, car shows, working on my collection of old GM cars, home projects. Emma came to me with everything: school issues, friend drama, advice. Ben, though, wasn't into cars. He leaned toward literature and civics, maybe future lawyer material, and he was closer to Lisa. Recently, though, Lisa seemed distant, like she was elsewhere mentally. When I asked her about it, she brushed me off. Then one Friday, I came home at 6 p.m., and the house was quiet. No dinner smells, no kids. Assuming Emma and Ben were out, I went upstairs to change. There, I found a little black dress, lingerie, stockings, and 6-inch heels laid out on our bed. It looked like we had plans, but she hadn't mentioned a thing. I found her in the bathroom, finishing her makeup. "Where are we going, hon?" I asked, unbuttoning my shirt. She looked at me flatly. "We're not going anywhere," she said. "Then why the outfit?" I asked. "I'm going out," she said. "Just me." "Really? And where are you going all dressed up without me? Where are the kids?" "They're staying with friends. I'm going on a date tonight, and I might be back in the morning." Her words hit me like a truck. "What do you mean? Back in the morning?" She rolled her eyes. "Exactly what I said. If things go well, I won't be home tonight." I stared at her, stunned. "Are you serious? If you want to cheat, wait for the divorce." "Oh, stop being dramatic," she said dismissively. "There's no divorce happening. I just need this night, Jack. Just one night to feel attractive to other men. If you love me, you'll let me do this." "If you loved me, you wouldn't even consider it," I shot back, feeling my patience unraveling. "I do love you," she insisted, cool as ever. "But I'm getting older, and I need this." Raymond is 10 years younger. He's been flirting with me for a while, and I finally accepted. It's just one night to feel wanted. "I'll be back tomorrow. Remember our vows?" I said, barely holding in my anger. "This is breaking them." "Don't be silly," she said, brushing me off. "It's just one night. I promise it won't happen again." "You think I'll believe a promise after this? If you go, we're done. Walk out that door, and I'll find a lawyer." "Don't be an idiot, Jack. There's not going to be a divorce. I'll come home and be the loving wife I've always been. But if you try for a divorce, I'll fight you on everything. You'll lose the house, the assets, and custody. I'll make the kids hate you for breaking up the family, and you call that love?" I asked, disgusted. "Yes," she said, as if nothing was wrong. "If you push for divorce, I'll do what I have to. I'm only asking for one night. And in a few years?" I pressed. "What happens when you need this again?" She just shrugged. "It's not love, Jack. It's just a confidence boost. It'll help me feel young again. He means nothing. I'll be back, and things will be normal." I took a deep breath, ready to make one final plea. "If you walk out, that's it. Cancel, and maybe we can try counseling." "Oh, we'll be fine," she said with a smirk. "If you want counseling, we'll discuss it when I get back." I left the room, furious and feeling helpless. Later, I heard her come downstairs, dressed up with her clutch, checking herself in the mirror. I sat in the living room, listening to the honk of a car outside. "He's here. I'll see you tomorrow," she said, walking over to kiss me. I turned away, and she kissed the air, frowning. "Fine," she muttered. "Be that way. Once you're over your tantrum, things will be normal again." With that, she turned and headed for the door. I called after her one last time. "If you go through that door, we're done. Think hard about what you're giving up here." She glanced back and shrugged. "I'm not giving up anything. I'll be back, and everything will go back to normal." And then she walked out. The second she left, I felt myself break. I just lost the marriage I thought I'd built over nearly 20 years. 17 years as husband and wife, a year of engagement, and 2 years of dating before that. She'd never even hinted at dissatisfaction. We had a good life, good kids, and worked through our problems like a team. And now this. After sitting in silence for half an hour, I accepted it. She wasn't coming back that night. I needed to make changes. Our house was sizable with 4 bedrooms, the master, Emma's room, Ben's room, and a guest bedroom with its own bathroom. I decided that guest room would be mine, at least for now. It took a couple of hours to move my clothes, toiletries, and personal items out of the master bedroom and into my new space. I knew divorce laws wouldn't favor me here. In our no-fault state, the process often handed wives the house, kids, and support, leaving men with the bills and what little assets remain. Once I'd settled into the guest room, I headed to my home office to organize our finances. There was an account I'd set up under my name for buying Lisa's gifts. Now, it would have a different use. I transferred half of our joint checking and savings balances into it, then paid off and canceled our shared credit cards. I applied for new cards in my name only, preparing to sever our financial ties. By Monday, I plan to transfer my direct deposit and split our investments. With these arrangements in place, I poured myself a glass of Mark Beam and tried to sleep. But lying in that empty bed, my mind raced, replaying the events of the day and wondering if I could have stopped her. Could I have confronted her? Stopped her from leaving? Gone after that guy? It was a long, restless night, with questions circling my mind like vultures. At dawn, I gave up on sleep, got up, and took a long shower, trying to clear my head. Dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, I made myself breakfast and waited. Around 9 a.m., Lisa came waltzing through the door with a cheerful, "Good morning, honey. I'm back, just like I promised." She looked around when I didn't respond, a bright smile on her face as if nothing had happened. I stayed silent, anger boiling just under the surface. By now, I'd realized that stopping her last night would have changed nothing. She would have just tried again. My feelings for her were gone, replaced by resentment and fueled by her arrogance, her cruelty, and her shameless lack of respect. "Hello?" she called, a bit of irritation creeping in when she didn't get the reaction she expected. "Where are you? I even cleaned up before coming home for you," she said, her voice moving closer to my office. She opened the door, flashing a smile. "Oh, there you are. Now, everything can go back to normal," she said, walking over with her arms open as if to hug me. I stood up and pushed her back. "Keep your filthy lips away from me. Who knows where they've been?" Her eyes widened in shock. I'd never spoken to her like that before. Before she could say anything, I continued. "You're going to need a full STD test, and I'll need a notarized clean report before you come anywhere near me again. As for intimacy, not a chance. I wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot pole, even if it had a dozen layers of protection on it." Her shock quickly turned to anger. "I see you're still sulking. I'm going to our room to rest. I had a long night, and you owe me an apology for this childish attitude." She snapped and stormed out. I almost laughed, knowing she was about to get a reality check. Minutes later, she was back, fuming. "What the hell did you do?" she shouted. "Where are your clothes? Your toiletries? What's going on?" "What do you mean?" I asked calmly, as if I didn't know what she was talking about. "Our closet is empty. Your drawers are empty. What do you think you're doing?" "My clothes are where they belong, in my closet, in my bathroom." Her eyes narrowed. "So now you think you're going to leave the master bedroom and throw some tantrum? You're ridiculous. I moved out of your bedroom. I'll be in my own space until I can find an apartment." "You're being absurd," she sneered, folding her arms. "You have a week to get over this and move back. After that, we'll go back to normal." "Not until I see that notarized report," I said, turning back to my computer. I spent most of the day in my office, avoiding her. The kids came home that afternoon, and I wondered how long it would take them to sense something was off. I'd found a few promising apartments online, scheduled viewings for Tuesday, and printed our financial statements for my lawyer appointment Monday. I knew the divorce process would likely favor her, but I was determined to be prepared. "Dad, dinner's ready," Emma said, sticking her head in. I joined the family in the kitchen, where Lisa had dressed up, done her hair and makeup, and made my favorite meal. She handed me a glass of wine, leaning in for a kiss, but I pulled away, poured the wine down the sink, and poured myself another Mark Beam. The kids noticed, and dinner grew tense. I focused on keeping the conversation light for Emma and Ben, but I didn't put anything on my plate, even though she'd cooked all my favorite dishes. Ben finally asked, "Dad, aren't you going to eat?" "Nope, not hungry," I replied evenly. After the most strained meal of my life, I refilled my glass and went back to my office, leaving the table for them to clear. About half an hour later, I shut down my computer, grabbed my truck keys, and went out for some peace. I had a quiet dinner alone at a restaurant, then stopped by a bar for a couple of drinks to unwind. When I got home, I saw Lisa's light still on, so I made a point to close my door loudly. I locked it, then wedged a chair under the knob, ignoring her knocking on the door. I didn't need any more conversations tonight. Early the next morning, I got up and decided it was going to be a football day. There were 3 games on, and I planned to spend the entire day watching them, alone and in peace, blocking out everything else. Ignoring my usual weekend chores, I'd nearly polished off a pot of coffee and had just started making myself an omelet when Emma walked into the kitchen. "Hey, sweetie, want an omelet?" I offered. "Sure, Dad, thanks," she said, grabbing some juice and sitting at the table. A few minutes later, Ben joined us, so I told him I'd make his next. As Emma ate, I heard Lisa coming down the hall. I poured the last cup of coffee for myself, turning off the pot as she entered. She glanced at the empty pot, irritation flashing in her eyes. "You couldn't leave me a cup?" she asked with a glare. "It's all there. You know how to make coffee," I replied, not missing a beat. "Whatever," she muttered, eyeing the stove. "So, you're making omelets?" I said. "Feel free to make one for yourself." I finished Ben's omelet, using up the last of the ingredients, then cleaned up and left the kitchen, feeling more done with her than ever. Around noon, I was in the living room watching the game when Lisa walked in, carrying a plate of food and a bottle of beer. "I brought you lunch and a beer so you wouldn't miss the game," she said, trying to sound cheerful. Without looking up, I knocked both off the table with my foot, sending them tumbling onto the floor. She stared at me, frozen with shock, as I got up, went to the kitchen, and grabbed myself a fresh beer. I didn't bother cleaning up the mess she'd made. I figured if she brought it, she could handle the cleanup. I honestly didn't care if it stained the carpet either. I wouldn't be living here much longer. "We need to discuss this," she began. "Shut up. The game's on," I said, not bothering to hide my irritation. "For God's sake, you need to fix your attitude." "The kids have noticed," she snapped. "They'll notice when I move out anyway," I said. "You're not moving out, and there will be no divorce," she insisted, huffing as she left the room. Later in the afternoon, Emma and Ben approached me during halftime. "Dad, what's going on with you and Mom?" Emma asked. "You might as well know," I said, exhaling. "Your mom and I are getting a divorce. This isn't about you two. It's just between us. We both love you." "But why?" Ben asked, confused. "Because your mother did something I can't accept. Even after I told her how I felt, she wasn't remorseful." "You mean her date Friday night?" Emma asked quietly. "You knew about that?" I asked, surprised. "Yeah, Mom told us you were upset about it," Emma explained, as if it was no big deal. "So you both know she cheated on me?" I pressed, feeling my frustration rise. "No, she didn't cheat," Emma said defensively. "She told you beforehand, so it wasn't sneaking around. It was only one night in your 20 years together. She said if you really loved her, you'd let her have that one night and move on." I was stunned and hurt, realizing my own daughter didn't understand my side. Lisa had clearly convinced her that I was blowing things out of proportion. "Really?" I said, holding back anger. If she truly loved me, she wouldn't even consider spending a night with someone else. "Dad, it was just one time. She promised it would never happen again," Emma insisted. "Promises?" I replied, shaking my head. "Over 17 years ago, your mom made a vow before God, family, and friends to forsake all others. And now I'm supposed to believe a private promise?" But you also vowed to stick with her in good and bad times, Ben pointed out. That's true. But when she broke her vow, that released me from mine, I replied, trying to stay calm. Why break up the family over one night? Emma asked, sounding more frustrated with me than her mom. Why am I the one being blamed for her actions? She broke her vows, not me, I said, feeling the hurt all over again. Mom wants to put this behind her. You're the one making a big deal and breaking up the family, Emma insisted. It was clear Lisa had turned the kids against me. They believed it was my ego, not her actions, causing all the problems. When they realized I wasn't backing down, they left, leaving me to watch the rest of the game alone. I could tell things wouldn't get easier with them around. As evening came, I could smell dinner cooking, but I stayed put. When Ben came to tell me it was ready, I just grabbed my truck keys. Where are you going? Dinner's ready, he asked, confused. I'm heading to the sports bar to watch the game. I'll eat there, I replied. But Mom made, he started. I'll be back after the game, I said, cutting him off. At the bar, I had a burger and a beer, one for each quarter, and made sure I was fine to drive home. By the time I got back, everyone was already in bed. The plate and beer bottle from earlier had been cleaned up, which made me smile a bit. At least she'd handled the mess. On Monday morning, I got an early start. My first call was to my broker, arranging for our investments to be split into a new account in my name. Next, I called HR to remove Lisa from my retirement account and listed Emma and Ben as my heirs. I also redirected my direct deposit to my new bank account. Lastly, I informed my boss about the divorce and requested time off for meetings and court dates. He was understanding and assured me I'd have the time I needed. When I met with my lawyer later, he confirmed my fears. I'd probably end up on the losing side. Custody would depend on the kid's choice, and after our last conversation, I wasn't optimistic. Still, I had the lawyer start the paperwork, and I asked that Lisa be served at work the next day. Afterward, I headed to the sports bar for Monday Night Football, ignoring her texts and calls. I let Emma know where I was, but her response was curt, obviously influenced by her mom. When I got home, they all gave me the cold shoulder. I went straight to my office, then to bed once everyone was asleep. Tuesday, I left early again. Work went fine, and I took the afternoon off to look at apartments. I found a nice 2-bedroom unit and put down a deposit, planning to move in Saturday. I bought a couch, table, and chairs from a secondhand store for delivery. I'd take my bed and office setup from home. By the time I got back that night, they were having dinner, and seeing they hadn't set a place for me, I smirked. I wasn't planning to eat it anyway. I made myself a massive sandwich, grabbed some chips and a beer, and went to my office. Emma walked in, irritated. Dad, why are you being such an a-hole? Because your mother cheated on me, disrespected me, and threw it in my face, I replied. I told her what would happen if she went through with it, and she did it anyway. You can't be tearing the family apart over this, Dad. It was just lovemaking, Emma said, frustration evident in her voice. Emma, I replied, someday you'll get married. Imagine if your husband told you he had a date with a younger, prettier woman and planned to spend the night with her. How would you feel? I wouldn't like it, she admitted. But if he promised it was just once, I'd try to get past it. Besides, if he told me, it wouldn't be cheating. Right. Picture saying your vows, then telling your husband you plan to spend a night with someone else. Think about the devastation in his eyes. I turned back to my work, feeling exhausted by her loyalty to her mother over everything we had stood for as a family. On Wednesday evening, I got home to an unexpected scene. Both sets of our parents were in the living room. Her parents being there didn't surprise me, but my parents being part of this ambush did. I'd always gotten along with Lisa's parents, especially her dad, who shared my love for cars. My parents had always been supportive and loving, but now, seeing their expressions, I knew they'd been briefed by Lisa. Jack, Lisa's father, Richard, started. We're disappointed in Lisa, but we think you're overreacting. She made one mistake in 20 years. You don't need to destroy the family over one small mistake. Small mistake? I replied, incredulous. This wasn't an accident. She ambushed me an hour before leaving, so I couldn't even try to stop it. She planned it. This was intentional. She didn't cheat, my mom said softly. She told you first. She didn't ask. She told me. Even when I objected, she didn't care. I warned her this would happen if she went through with it. Son, my dad chimed in, we know you're in pain, but think about the family. Lisa still loves you. With counseling, you can get past this. Don't tear the family apart. We raised you to be a good man. Think about your mother and me. We'll do whatever it takes to stay in our grandkids' lives. I couldn't believe it. My own parents were suggesting I overlook her betrayal. I was done with this talk and got up, leaving the room without another word. I shut my bedroom door firmly behind me and, 10 minutes later, changed into jeans, a casual shirt, and boots. I walked through the living room without looking at anyone and left for the sports bar, needing to get away. The house was silent and dark when I returned hours later. Thursday and Friday went by much the same. I ignored Lisa, and the kids were upset with me, convinced by her that I was in the wrong. I was a little surprised that Lisa hadn't noticed the credit cards not working yet, but I figured she'd discover it during her Saturday shopping routine. Friday evening, I was in my office when Lisa walked in wearing a transparent nightie, stockings, garter belt, and heels. The kids are out tonight, she said, her tone trying to be enticing. It's time for you to get over this and come to bed. I want you to make love to me all night. I need you to take me back, she demanded, her voice a mix of desperation and desire. No thanks, I replied coldly, not even glancing up. I haven't seen a clinic report proving you're disease-free. Stop being ridiculous. I need you back in my bed. Come on. I'm ready for you, she insisted, her tone growing desperate and frustrated. Not interested, I said flatly, turning another page in my book. If you don't come to bed, I'll just call Raymond again, she snapped, trying to goad me. So much for it being a one-time thing, I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Damn it, it was. But if you keep rejecting me, you're pushing me back to someone else. Have fun, I shot back. Let me know if you're bringing him here so I can leave. Without another word, she stormed out, and not long after, I heard her tires screeching down the driveway. With the house empty, I packed my things, dismantled the bed, and loaded my truck with my clothes. I slept on the sofa in my office, feeling the weight of the decision I'd made but knowing it was the right one. The next morning, I picked up the keys to my new apartment and moved everything with the help of a few friendly neighbors. When I returned to the house later, no one was home, so I enlisted a neighbor's son to help load my desk, office furniture, and the recliner. By that evening, my daughter called, her voice tight with worry. Daddy, where are you? She asked, sounding confused. I'm home, sweetheart, I said, keeping my tone calm. No, you aren't, she replied. Your office is cleaned out, the spare room is empty, and your recliner is gone. Plus, your truck isn't here. You're right. I moved into an apartment, I explained, keeping my voice even. Maybe after the divorce, I'll look for another house. God, Dad, I can't believe you're being such an a-hole about this. I thought you loved us, she said, her voice breaking. I do love you, Emma. I always will. Just not enough to stay, she said bitterly. I'm not abandoning you. You can come see me anytime, and I'll always take care of you and your brother. You left us and are breaking up the family, she said, her voice shaking with anger. Your mother broke up the family, I replied quietly. I told her this would happen if she went on that date. She did it anyway, I reminded Emma, my frustration slipping through. She thought you loved her enough to get past it, she replied, her tone softening. And I thought she loved me enough not to do it, I countered, feeling the weight of everything pressing down. Fine, whatever, Emma muttered, hanging up and leaving me alone with my thoughts. The divorce was a drawn-out nightmare. Lisa fought it, demanded counseling, and insisted I pay for it. I refused and eventually won that argument. In counseling, I told the therapist I'd been ordered to attend but wasn't obliged to participate, and after 12 unproductive sessions, the counselor gave up. Lisa fought over every little thing, even items like the Bud Light lamp and the old car poster in the garage, all just to make the process miserable for me and to get under my skin. Finally, the judge granted the divorce. I was ordered to cover half the mortgage, but she got to keep the house. I paid $2,000 in monthly child support and $1,000 in spousal support for 5 years, which would end if she remarried. She moved Raymond in before the divorce was even final, and half my paycheck went to her. I cashed in some investments, bought a fixer-upper, and moved in with just my tools, fixing the place up on weekends and evenings. Visitation was a constant struggle. Lisa made it difficult, and the kids grew increasingly distant, eventually telling me they didn't want to see me. Sending gifts, letters, and birthday cards made no difference. They were returned unopened, although my checks kept being cashed. When I contacted them about their college funds, they simply replied, "No, thanks." Lisa had done a thorough job turning my own kids against me. I buried myself in work and house projects, saving money by staying in most nights. One day, I called my mom. "Hey, Mom, how are you?" "I'm fine. How are you?" She replied cheerfully. "Just checking in. I haven't heard about Thanksgiving. Are you hosting?" After a pause, she replied, "Yes, but Lisa, her parents, and the kids are coming. She's bringing her new boyfriend. It would be awkward for you to be there." "Seriously, Mom? You're choosing them over me?" I asked, feeling the hurt rise. "We want to keep our relationship with the grandkids. This is your fault. You should have kept the family together." "What about Christmas Eve?" I asked, grasping at straws. "We'll be at Lisa's Christmas Day." "Forget it, Mom," I said, ending the call. I spent Christmas Eve alone, watching Die Hard, and ignored calls and texts from my mom. The packages I'd sent my kids were returned unopened. 5 years later, I received a wedding announcement. Lisa married Raymond the weekend after my final spousal payment. With Ben turning 18 the year before, my child support had also ended. I celebrated by getting drunk, feeling both relief and regret. I'd loved and supported them all, only to be rejected. Now, finally free, I resolved to move on and put it behind me. But one issue lingered. I was still paying half the mortgage. That would end with Ben's graduation, but my name was still on the deed. Lisa assumed the house was hers, but per the divorce agreement, she could only stay there until the kids finished high school. I still owned half, and I wanted my share now that it had appreciated. I reached out to my lawyer. At the time of the divorce, the house was worth $300,000, with $200,000 in equity. Now, it was valued at $500,000, with $450,000 in equity, and only $50,000 left on the mortgage. I wanted my share, knowing it would irritate Lisa to no end. She loved that house, but I'd paid half the mortgage for years and deserved that equity back. A week later, Lisa called, her tone furious. "Jack, what's going on?" "Not much. Just working on my place. Surprised to hear from you." "You jerk. Why did a realtor come to the house to get me to sign a listing contract? Since both our names are on the title, she needs my signature if you want to sell." "I'm not selling. I love this house." "Then you'll need to pay me my half of the equity," I replied. "What? I got the house in the divorce," she shouted. "No, you got to live there until Ben graduated. Now, either we sell it and split the proceeds, or you buy me out. I'm not giving you $100,000 for a house that's mine." "Good thing I'm not asking for $100,000, I said, unfazed. "The equity's now $450,000. My half is $225,000. With the improvements, let's call it $250,000. "You're insane. I'm not giving you a dime," she shrieked before hanging up. I chuckled, knowing this wasn't over. A few months later, the judge ruled in my favor. She was ordered to cover court fees and my legal expenses. The house appraised for more than expected, so I ended up with $275,000. Raymond had to cover a chunk of the buyout, which I heard later caused friction between them. With that money, I finished my renovations, adding a workshop. I found a 1972 Chevy pickup in rough shape and bought it for the chassis. I stripped it down, cleaned, repainted, and started rebuilding it. The rear differential was decent, but I rebuilt it anyway. The transmission was a Borg-Warner T10 manual 4-speed. For fun, I went all out on the engine, a 427 big block. I ordered one, had it shipped, and tore it apart. After machine work, I installed a new forged crankshaft, 10:1 pistons, a hefty cam, and ported heads with double springs. I added a blower, chrome valve covers, polished aluminum, and steel-braided hoses. On the first drive, I hit the freeway and punched the gas. The back tires broke loose instantly, the power surging through the vehicle. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely alive. I barely kept the truck steady on that first drive. Lesson learned: press the accelerator slowly. After that, I drove more carefully. A few weeks later, I saw an ad for a public car show and thought it'd be fun to enter. On the day of the show, I drove my '72 Chevy to the park, checked in, and set up my spot next to a sleek '68 GTO. As I got settled, I noticed two redheads, a woman around my age and a teenage girl, setting up behind the GTO. No man was with them, and I noted no ring on the older one's hand. "Good morning. Nice GTO you have there," I said, smiling. "Thanks. And your truck looks great too," she replied. "This is our first time as participants," I said, introducing myself. "I'm Jack." "Nice to meet you, Jack. I'm Hannah, and this is my daughter, Olivia," she replied warmly. We spent most of the day together, talking with other car enthusiasts. While I didn't win any awards, I enjoyed myself. Hannah shared that she divorced her husband for cheating, and the GTO was her prize in the split. Olivia was friendly and clearly still angry at her dad for his betrayal. When the show ended, I invited them to dinner at Red Lobster, and they accepted. Over dinner, I shared my story, and they were surprised my kids had blamed me for the divorce after my ex-wife cheated. "I'm so sorry, Jack. You seem like a genuinely good guy. You didn't deserve that," Hannah said sympathetically. We exchanged numbers, and Olivia gave me a thumbs up and a big smile, signaling her approval. Hannah and I went out the next weekend for dinner and dancing. She gave me a kiss on the cheek as we parted, and I caught Olivia giving me another thumbs up from across the room. After a few more dates, I invited them to my place and made lasagna. They enjoyed it and admired the house, though Hannah remarked that it could use a woman's touch. The following weekend, they invited me over to their apartment. Hannah's cooking blew mine out of the water, and I couldn't stop eating. I apologized for making a pig of myself, but they laughed, saying it was the best compliment for someone who loves to cook. 2 weekends later, Hannah and I went out again, and during a slow song, she whispered, "Take me home." Surprised, I pulled back, and she giggled. "You're home," she clarified. Luckily, I'd driven my regular truck, not the '72. That night, we shared something special, and I made her breakfast the next morning before driving her home. A few months later, I proposed, and she accepted. We had a simple ceremony in front of a judge, and Hannah and Olivia moved into my house. Olivia even started calling me Daddy. Life was wonderful. Sure, we had disagreements, and Olivia and I clashed now and then. She was still a teenager, and I was a new authority figure. But she respected me, and Hannah loved me as much as I loved her. About a year later, I received a call from an unknown number. I picked up, and to my shock, Emma's voice filled the line. "Daddy, it's me," she said excitedly. "Emma, it's good to hear from you," I replied, trying to hide my surprise. "I have some news. I'm getting married." "That's wonderful, sweetie. I'm so happy for you." "I'd like you at the wedding," she continued. "Raymond is paying for it, and he'll walk me down the aisle. You wouldn't be in the front row, but I'd still like you there." "Raymond?" I asked, my stomach sinking. "The man your mother cheated with? She married him?" "Look, Dad," she sighed. "I'm trying to reconnect. I'd like you at my wedding." "You're saying it's my fault they got together after I left? You still think your mother did nothing wrong?" "I can't support this marriage, Emma. Raymond took the last honor of a father away from me. You've become just like her, a shallow, self-centered person." "Fine. Don't expect to see your grandchildren," she snapped. "Mom's right. You really are an a-hole." She hung up, and I sat there, stunned. Her attempt at reconnecting felt like an insult. She'd made her choice 10 years ago, siding with her mom. Any chance of a relationship with her or Ben was long gone. It hurt, but I had to accept that they would always blame me for their mother's choices. I put down my phone and returned to work on my latest project, a 1963 Chevy pickup. This one wouldn't be as intense as the '72, just a solid build with a slightly beefier 350 engine. I hadn't realized Olivia was home, or that she'd overheard my conversation. A few minutes later, my phone rang with an unknown number, and Olivia picked it up. "Hello, is this Emma Peterson?" asked a woman's voice. Yes. Can I help you? Olivia replied. Yes, she said coldly. You can stop calling my dad and acting like a spoiled brat. He's the best man I know and doesn't deserve a self-centered kid like you dragging up a family he's moved on from. Excuse me? Who the hell are you? Emma demanded. My name is Olivia Peterson, your dad's daughter, Olivia said firmly. My mom married your dad, and he adopted me. I love him and would never disrespect him. I know exactly what happened. Your mom disrespected her husband by going on a date and sleeping with another man, and somehow you're okay with that? My bio dad cheated on my mom, and she kicked him out without hesitation. If my mom ever cheated, I'd be there to help my dad kick her out too. With that, Olivia hung up. I hadn't even known she'd heard me, but I couldn't help feeling proud. She understood what family loyalty meant. For the first time in a long time, I felt appreciated and respected for the man I was, and I knew that with Hannah and Olivia by my side, I could finally let go of the past. He's the most decent, caring person I know, and I'm grateful your mom was stupid enough to let him go. Olivia's voice rang out through the phone. And let your grandparents know they have another granddaughter, but I don't want anything to do with people who rejected their own son for a cheating wife. When you say your vows, imagine your husband cheating on you. Call me when it happens so I can laugh. Have a crappy life, sis. With that, she hung up. I stared at the phone, stunned. Dad got married and didn't even tell us. Now I had a younger sister who, strangely enough, sounded like me. Before Mom convinced Ben and me that Dad was breaking up the family over a minor issue, I'd thought he must have had a reason. I even considered moving in with him. But Mom explained that she just needed this one thing to feel young again, and that Dad had stubbornly left her. Olivia, however, was nothing but rude, throwing insults without knowing my side of things. She called me names and belittled my family. Of course, Raymond would walk me down the aisle. He'd been there for me and was paying nearly $20,000 for the wedding. I doubted Dad could even contribute much. I was still upset when Mom and both grandmas came in from a shopping trip, clearly noticing my mood. Honey, what's wrong? Mom asked. I told Dad about the wedding and invited him. I'd hoped it might help us reconnect, I said. That's wonderful, honey, Grandma Peterson said. Will he be there? No, I sighed. He got mad when I told him Raymond would walk me down the aisle and said it would be awkward to sit with Mom and Raymond. Oh, that's too bad, she replied. I thought he'd be over his stubbornness by now. And that's not all, I continued. I found out I have a stepsister. What? They all exclaimed in shock. Her name's Olivia. Apparently, Dad married her mom and adopted her. She was so rude, saying Mom was stupid for letting Dad go. She even said she's glad Dad found someone who appreciates him. Their faces showed shock as I recounted both calls. Grandma Peterson whispered, Jack got married and didn't invite us? Finally, the day of my wedding arrived. For a brief moment, I felt a pang of sadness that my dad wouldn't be there, but I brushed it off. I'd reached out, and he'd rejected me. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, and I was marrying the man I loved. Raymond beamed with pride as he took my arm and led me up the aisle, and my heart swelled seeing all my friends and family gathered around. Ben was one of Michael's groomsmen, and tears of joy filled my eyes as I saw Michael smiling back at me. When Raymond lifted my veil, he kissed my cheek and said, Congratulations, baby, handing me over to Michael. The ceremony began, and as the minister asked, Who gives this bride away? Raymond proudly replied, Her mother and I do. A faint unease crept in, but I pushed it aside. As I gazed into Michael's eyes, repeating my vows, something stopped me. The words forsake all others lingered in my mind. I imagined Michael with another woman, or myself having to confess cheating to him, and suddenly, I understood everything. I understand now, I blurted out, a sudden clarity washing over me. Michael looked confused. What do you mean? He asked, worry filling his eyes. Absolutely everything, I replied, my voice filled with conviction. I looked at him seriously. Michael, do you really love me? Of course I love you, he said, bewildered. Why are you asking? Because I can't marry you today. We will get married, but not today, I said, my voice trembling slightly. I need to make things right first. Baby, What's wrong? He asked, looking even more concerned. I love you, and I will marry you, I said, trying to reassure him. But there's something I need to fix first. We'll reschedule. You're not leaving me at the altar, are you? He asked, fear creeping into his voice. Not a chance. You're coming with me, I said, taking his hand. I turned to the guests and announced, I'm sorry, but I can't go through with this today. We'll reschedule. In the meantime, please enjoy the reception. It's all paid for. Raymond has covered everything. With Michael's hand in mine, I walked back down the aisle. My mom and Raymond blocked my exit, Raymond fuming about the money spent. Mom demanded, Emma, what are you doing? I'm fixing a mistake I made years ago, I answered, my voice steady. What mistake? She asked, confused. The mistake of blaming my dad for the divorce when it was your fault for cheating, I replied, resolute. Emma, I'm your mother, and I am not a strumpet, she shot back, defensive and stern. You will respect me. Respect? I retorted, anger rising. Really, mother? Once a cheater, always a cheater. How dare you? She gasped, stunned. How dare me? I'm ashamed I ever looked up to you, I said, my voice breaking. It wasn't until I was saying my vows that I realized just how horrible you were. I finally understood what it would feel like if Michael cheated on me or if I betrayed him. Dad was a good role model. You weren't. What do you mean? Mom asked, fear in her eyes. I mean you destroyed our family, I said, my voice laced with hurt. You hurt Dad, you hurt us, and I was wrong to side with you. I never meant to hurt anyone, she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. But you did, and now I need to make things right, I said firmly. She looked shaken, but I couldn't stop. And don't think I don't know about your workouts with Mark Evans at his apartment, I continued. Or how Alex, the pool boy, takes extra time because you're sleeping with him. Or the landscape crew you cozy up with after they finish the yard work. Mom looked horrified, her face pale, but I didn't wait for a response. Taking Michael's hand, I left the wedding, feeling like I was finally on the right path to healing old wounds and making things right. I have videos of that, Olivia continued, her voice steely. And let's not forget the backroom meetings with Luis, your hairstylist. At least Raymond doesn't have to worry about you cheating with your boss. Oh, and Peter Harris, our neighbor, who drops by when his wife has girls' night out. Mom's eyes darted nervously to Raymond, who looked utterly stunned. I turned to him. Raymond, I vow to repay you for this wedding with the same commitment my mom had to her vows. Don't expect a dime. I pulled Michael down the aisle and stopped to talk to the videographer, who handed me a copy of the footage, which he'd caught from start to finish. I signed a release form for YouTube, knowing the scene would go viral. Michael and I dashed to the parking lot, got into his car, and sped off. Where are we going? He asked. West on 156. I'll put in the address, I replied, hoping Dad would be home when we got there. We didn't stop to change. I was on a mission and didn't want to waste any time. It's not every day you open your door to see a bride and groom standing on your porch. Dad looked bewildered when he recognized me, especially since I'd made it clear I never wanted to see him again. Today was supposed to be my wedding day, and here I was, not at a church or reception, but at his doorstep. Daddy, can I talk to you for a minute? I asked softly. Still in shock, he stepped aside, and I introduced him to Michael before gesturing to the living room, where Hannah and Olivia were equally surprised. Emma, this is my wife, Hannah, and our daughter, Olivia, Dad said. Olivia, Hannah, this is my daughter, Emma. I don't know who the man with her is. Daddy, this is Michael Jensen, my fiancé, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. I couldn't go through with it today. I realized I can't get married unless my dad walks me down the aisle. I finally understand now. You were right. It was Mom who threw everything away, not you. I'm so sorry I blamed you. You didn't deserve any of that, and I hope you'll let me back into your life. My dad's face softened, and I could see he was both touched and curious. Emma, did something happen at the wedding? You're still in your dress, and Michael's in his tux. I had an epiphany during the vows, I admitted, handing him a CD. You should watch this. While Michael and I changed into regular clothes, Hannah took Emma to a bedroom to freshen up. Dad set up the video player in the living room, and when we were ready, we all watched the footage together. It began like a normal wedding, but when I stumbled over the vows, everything shifted. I stopped the wedding and exposed Mom's infidelities, leaving her stunned. I couldn't go through with it, I explained. I realized how hurt Michael would be if I ever did to him what Mom did to you. I finally understood what forsaking all others really means. I want you to walk me down the aisle, Dad, not Mom and Raymond. Dad looked at me, visibly moved. And Olivia, I added, smiling at her. I need my little sister as a bridesmaid. Your words woke me up. How could I get married without you both there? This was a lot to process for all of us. We talked for hours, reconnecting and sharing stories. I learned that Olivia had gotten my number from Dad's phone and reached out to me herself. By the time it got late, Dad invited us to stay in the guest room. I ignored the endless calls from Mom and Raymond, focusing on the positive and reconnecting with my dad. My friends at the wedding had stayed to party on Raymond's dime. Ben sent me a video of Mom trying to smooth things over with Raymond, only for him to call her a cheating strumpet. That relationship seemed well and truly over. Ben also managed to cancel the flight and resort reservations for my honeymoon, though there was a 20% cancellation fee. Since Michael and I had already taken time off, we stayed with Dad for the week. I got to know him better and even spent time in his workshop. It was strained at first. Michael had been influenced by Mom's version of events, but as he saw the truth and my dad's dedication, he began to trust him. We set a new wedding date for the same venue a year later, with Dad proudly walking me down the aisle. Hannah and Olivia were both part of the planning, and we updated everyone in the wedding party, except Mom and Raymond. Over the following months, Dad and I rebuilt our relationship, and I got to know Michael better as we spent more time together. We even started attending car shows as a family, bringing along Hannah's GTO, Dad's 72 truck, Michael's Challenger, and Olivia's 74 Firebird. Ben joined us a few times, though it was harder with him since he was closer to Mom. Meanwhile, Mom's life was falling apart. Raymond moved out and filed for divorce under irreconcilable differences, probably to avoid the penalties of the prenup. He'd had enough of the lies and infidelities, and it looked like he was walking away for good. The tables had finally turned, and the truth had caught up with her. In the end, I gained a family that truly cared for one another. Dad, Hannah, and Olivia welcomed me back, and Michael's steady support helped me face the truth about Mom. Reconnecting with my dad reminded me of what real commitment and honor look like. I learned that love isn't just a word. It's something you prove every day through actions, respect, and integrity. The prenup protected Raymond's assets, so Lisa only got to keep the house and about $50,000. I explained to Hannah. Raymond couldn't prove he'd used his own money to buy out my half of the house since his name was never on the title. He'd also missed the window to refile under infidelity. Word of Lisa's affairs spread fast, tanking her reputation in the community. Friends distanced themselves, and her invitations to parties and charity events dried up. With no job and entirely dependent on Raymond's income, her financial situation crumbled, adding to the fallout. Raymond paid a high price for ignoring red flags. He'd sunk hundreds of thousands into buying out my share, paid nearly $30,000 for the wedding, and gave Lisa a settlement of $50,000. In the end, he walked away from it all, humiliated by the public exposure of her affairs. Lisa's response was to spread rumors, telling anyone who'd listen that his equipment was lacking and that he didn't know how to use it. That gossip followed him everywhere. Soon, every woman he met at a bar would just laugh. He became a recluse, going only to work and back home. "Ready, Daddy?" my oldest daughter asked, bringing me back to the present. No father is ever really ready to let go of his daughters, but I'm honored to do this for you, I said proudly. The music filled the church as I stepped forward, guiding Emma down the aisle. I glanced around and smiled as I spotted my wife, Hannah, in the front row. Lisa was seated in the fourth row, looking sour every time she glanced up at Hannah in the seat she'd once claimed. As the minister asked, "Who gives this woman to be wed?" I replied, "As her father, I give her to be wed." I leaned close to Emma, whispering, "Love you, Munchkin," as I kissed her cheek before handing her off to Michael. Emma had asked me not to acknowledge Lisa, So I walked over and took my seat beside Hannah. Emma's voice rang out as she finished her vows, practically shouting, "Forsaking all others," as she beamed at Michael. The ceremony was beautiful, and the crowd cheered as they kissed. At the reception, I noticed Lisa sitting off to the side, looking miserable, especially each time she saw Hannah sitting with me at the head table. She took advantage of the open bar, and I wondered if Raymond would have shown up even if he'd been invited. My responsibilities that day were complete. I'd walked Emma down the aisle, given a toast, and shared a father-daughter dance. Then I danced with Hannah while Emma and Michael took the floor with his parents. It felt fulfilling to be there, seeing my daughter's joy. After a while, I returned to my table, watching as Olivia danced with a young man vying for her attention. I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Excuse me, Hannah. May I borrow your husband for a dance?" It was Lisa. Hannah eyed her before responding. "Just be sure to return him to where you found him." Hannah looked at me with a mix of trust and caution, clearly not concerned about me but wary of Lisa's intentions. Lisa led me onto the dance floor as a slow song started, and I kept a respectful distance, avoiding pulling her in too close. She started talking. "You were supposed to give me that one night, and then let us go back to normal. We should have been here together today, and you shouldn't have left. You should have known me better than to think I'd be okay with you cheating," I replied. "It wasn't cheating," she insisted. "I told you before it happened. I didn't sneak around. It doesn't matter if you told me or not. The fact is, you slept with someone else, and that's cheating. I never gave you permission. I told you not to do it, but you did anyway." "I never wanted a divorce," she whispered. "I only wanted that one night. You're the only man I ever loved. The lovemaking with him wasn't even good." "Then why did you marry him?" I asked. "Because you divorced me," she exclaimed. "I didn't want to be alone. I thought I could grow to love him, but I could never get over you. I was angry that you left, and when you wouldn't talk to me, I married him out of spite." "So why did you cheat on him?" I asked, unmoved. "Because he was terrible in bed. I tried to help him, but he wouldn't listen. When I couldn't stand it anymore, I found others who could satisfy me. I never expected Emma would betray me like that." Her voice broke slightly. "I'm sorry for you, Lisa," I said with genuine sadness. "We had a great marriage, but you threw it all away for one night of mediocrity. And no, there's no chance of getting back together." Her eyes filled with regret. "Not even a little?" I chuckled. "Not just no, but hell no. Even if I weren't married, the way you turned our kids against me destroyed any chance of us reconciling. Now, I have a wonderful wife and another daughter whom I love deeply. The best I can offer you is civility when we're at the same family events." Thankfully, the song ended shortly after, and I returned to Hannah's side without speaking to Lisa again that night. Lisa couldn't keep up with the mortgage on the house, so she sold it and moved into a small apartment. She got enough to live modestly, and while she occasionally went out with friends, she never remarried. Raymond ended up living alone as well, his life a quiet shadow of what he tried to build with Lisa. Emma and Michael's marriage blossomed, blessed with 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. Ben also married a kind woman, and they had 2 daughters. From what I know, neither couple has faced the pain of infidelity, building strong marriages on trust and honesty. Some people asked why I didn't seek revenge on Lisa and Raymond. The truth is, any attempt at revenge would have hurt me more than it hurt them. I learned the best revenge is a life well lived, and karma took care of the rest. Now, I have a wonderful wife, and I'm surrounded by a family who loves me. "Ready, Daddy?" Olivia asked. "No father's ever really ready to let go of his daughters," I said, feeling the weight of the moment. "But I'm honored to do this for you." The doors opened, and the music filled the church as I proudly walked Olivia down the aisle. Hannah beamed from the front row, and I knew my life was truly blessed.